J.J. Abrams' Superman project still alive? Well, according to James Gunn, the answer is yes. So, I don't have. Oh, well, I mean, I have an Instagram, but I didn't bother with Threads. But James Gunn posts on there quite a bit. And someone, Nick Tisnado, simply asked him, is the Abrams Superman Elseworlds project still in development? And James Gunn simply responded, yes. So there you have it. That's pretty cut and dried. But in development, uh, lots of things are in development and never see the light of day. It was a logical and reasonable conclusion that this thing was scrapped. Uh, Pretty much in the aftermath of the announcement of the DCEU was over. Uh, Within a month's time, Henry Cavill was back, and then he wasn't. And then there would be this brand new Superman, and so on and so forth. Plus, the obvious money is the problem. So, how many of these projects can you go forward with? Canceled the Batgirl film in favor of a tax write-off. Now, the Batgirl film had a lot of extra baggage with it, as it was a vehicle of what the original plan of the Flash movie was to be, that the universe would change and there'd be this new order of things for the DCEU. Most notably of Michael Keaton's Batman replacing the Ben Affleck Batman, and that's why his Batman was featured in the Batgirl film. So the idea of thinking of, well, that's no longer the case, so, oh boy, it's just too much trouble, plus word was it wasn't that good, and all this sort of thing. And so let's just take the tax write-off. But it's also in the thing of it's too costly to risk trying to sell this thing. We're better off saving the money on taxes and what have you. So if you're in that position, you have to be careful with the projects you're willing to push for and take on that risk. Why would you keep the J.J. Abrams Superman, written by blatant racist Ta-Nehisi Coates? This would be the Black Superman. No, not Calvin Ellis. From the comics, they had two iterations of a Black Superman in the multiverse. Calvin Ellis was basically a suck-up to Barack Obama. Calvin Ellis was Superman who became president and all this sort of stuff. The somewhat better story, not by much, but was the Val Zod character, who was introduced in the New 52 endeavor that failed. But nevertheless, they tried, where they brought back Earth 2, but this time the Justice Society characters, which were the original versions of the DC characters, from what's referred to as the Golden Age now, and the World War II era and all that. But this time they would be much younger. They would not be based in the World War II era or anything like that. And in their world, Darkseid had invaded the world, and the main superheroes they had at the time was Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and all three were killed in this war, stopping, well, not Darkseid, and Steppenwolf came, so you can see the beginnings of that idea of Steppenwolf being the villain in the DC movies and all that. But nevertheless, they managed to fight them off, but at the cost of their lives. Later, it was discovered that Superman had actually been kidnapped by them and tortured and all this sort of stuff, and cloned and whatnot. But then he died after that. But anyway, in the meantime, there was a new Batman who turns out was yet again Thomas Wayne, having had not died but faked his death. It was pretty bad. He was an interesting Batman, but that origin story is pretty awful. And then the new Superman was this Val Zod character, which turns out was, from the Zod family, but was kept in some government institution. Very much like they just took things from the Flashpoint Earth and painted it onto this new version of Earth 2. And there were some interesting things to it, but it washed out pretty quickly. Um, and then, of course, this was the first version of Alan Scott being gay. Now, it was clearly a shoehorn at the last minute, but this is alternate Earth stuff, so didn't really care. What they're doing now with Alan Scott is soliciting prostitutes and everything. It's pretty awful. But anyway, that was Val Zod. So he became the new Superman of that world and all of that. But it ran its course and fizzled out in all of that. But anyway, neither of these Supermen apparently would have been featured or will be featured, depending on how this goes, in the Abrams Superman movie. So with Elseworlds being something they did announce that they would be doing, so Joker fits nicely in that. The Batman would be seen as Elseworlds. And so this would be seen as an Elseworlds film. I'm guessing if the Keanu Reeves Constantine sequel goes through, that too would be an Elseworlds. I doubt that they would consider him the Constantine of the DCU. At one time, thought maybe that's what they were thinking, but I guess probably not. And so all this comes down to, well, why could you have done a Man of Steel 2 Elseworlds film? And so, oh, well, yeah, the confusion of two different Supermen, and boy, the two Superman films could cancel each other out. But no, you can have this. You can't have Henry, but you can have Ta-Nehisi Coates. And with money sparse, my guess is a true green light on the, and it also depends on how cheap can you do a Superman movie. Depends on how well the DCU does, and if Superman Legacy, as always, and as everything, is a smash hit, then full steam ahead on all these other projects. In the long run, a lot of them might not make it because successive movies might not do as well and stuff like that. But then, hey, yeah, there's room to eke out a little spot here for this little strange project, because Joker kind of opened the door to ideas and pursuits of, especially the Elseworlds idea and concept, all of that, and so you could have these different takes on DC characters in largely standalone films, I would think, unless they're so popular they take on a life of its own and what have you. Obviously, it's just, I don't know if we'll ever get the full story of why Cavill was shown the door, why all that had to be scrapped, other than the performance overall for the DCEU was not all that great. But still, even if it meant you're not bringing the whole DCEU back, it would have been nice to have a nice Superman film for the Cavill version to get a good send-off or something like that. But then again, the argument, would it conflict with the David Cornsweet Superman? And yes, it would, and yet they're still trying to have it both ways with these other projects, which are, very different from one another, sure. But make up your mind here. Because a lot of this stuff about scrapping the DCEU, it's something I can respect if it's a full reboot and restart and you move forward. The obvious thing would have been for Robert Pattinson to show up at the end of the Flash movie, and he's Batman. That's that. But Matt Reeves doesn't want to do that and all that. Well, who's in charge here? These are your properties, and it would have been so much easier to consolidate things like that. And then you start introducing your new characters, which is what they're doing now. But you're still keeping baggage. You're still keeping stumbling blocks here and stuff like that. Elseworlds projects, and the I know it. I mean, comic book guy and stuff, but the overall movie audience, and that's always been the excuse about not wanting certain characters on TV shows and then have them be on the movies. Going forward, again, the DCU mandates by James Gunn is that any future TV shows will be connected to it all, so that kind of resolves that problem, but you're still producing projects that don't have anything to do with it. So you see the conflict, you know. But, you know, an Elseworlds thing about when you're doing something as far afield like Joker, which worked, and if you did something like that with another character that's so far removed, but I don't know how you do that with a Superman story. And something by Ta-Nehisi Coates, it's like you're just burning money. Unless there's somebody else, some ghostwriter's going to come in and touch it up and just give Coates the credit, you know. But largely when Zaslav came in, a lot of Abrams projects just went up in smoke. And it seems likely that his phone calls are not answered as much as they once were. And Bad Robot doesn't have the sway it once did. So I guess just the final decision just hasn't officially been made yet, perhaps, or there's going to be some little Abrams Superman project that gets made on the cheap, and if Max is still a thing, it might be there, or they'll license it out to Amazon or Netflix, you know, and then they'll be done with it. And that's about it. Perhaps the Batman cartoon that Abrams is involved with might do well, and maybe that'll regain him some cred in this area, but that remains to be seen as well. So it's odd, because a lot of this stuff about scrap everything, start over, I can respect that. I won't like all of it, you know, Henry Cavill and no more of that cast, you know, which I liked and all that. But I could respect it, especially under the circumstances. You know, this was a new regime came in and the old regime screwed up. So that sort of thing. But it's just all very odd about this. So anyway, so as per James Gunn, apparently the J.J. Abrams Superman film is still in development and a possibility.